The world without touch. Close your eyes and try to remember a sensation you've never actually felt. Not a memory, but a ghost of a feeling. The warmth of a hand against yours. The friction of skin against skin. The simple, mindless, and beautiful act of a hug. In your world, these are the fundamental building blocks of being human. They are how you greet, how you love, and how you comfort. But in our 2026, these acts are not expressions of love. They are a death sentence. They are the ultimate crime against the collective survival of the human race. You wake up in a 12 square meter hub unit in Neo-Florence. The air you breathe isn't just air. It is a pharmaceutical product, filtered through 16 layers of ultraviolet ionization and chemical scrubbers. You don't open a window to let in the morning breeze, because there are no windows. There hasn't been an open window in Europe for 5 centuries. Instead, you have high-definition wall screens displaying a sky that is artificially blue, a sky that hasn't been polluted by the biological haze, the red fog, that now permanently blankets the ruins of the old world outside your steel-reinforced walls. You look at the digital frame on your bedside. It shows a picture of your mother. You've known her for 24 years. You've talked to her every single day through a screen. You've cried on camera together, laughed through speakers, and shared every milestone of your life. But you have never touched her. Not once. You have never felt the weight of her hand on your shoulder. You have never felt her pulse. Because in 1347, the Great Mortality didn't just kill half of Europe and then fade into the history books. It stayed. It evolved. It became an intelligent, shifting shadow that refused to leave the human lungs. It became the permanent warden of our species. Welcome to the timeline where the Black Death won. Welcome to your life in the eternal quarantine. By the end of this journey, you will understand why in our world, the most dangerous weapon ever created is a simple, bare human hand. The day nature refused to back down. In your history books, you learn about the Black Death as a tragedy with an end date. You are told that by 1353, the plague had burned itself out, allowing the survivors to build the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and eventually, your modern world. But history is fragile. It only takes one microscopic shift for the entire trajectory of civilization to collapse. October 1347. A fleet of 12 Genoese galleys arrives in Messina, Sicily. The sailors are dead or dying, covered in black boils. In your timeline, the rats left the ships, the fleas jumped to the humans, and the bacteria eventually settled. But in our timeline, the Yersinia pestis bacteria underwent a terrifying mutation within the lungs of a single sailor, a man named Vittorio. Vittorio didn't die in his bed. He survived just long enough to reach the crowded market of Messina. With every cough, he didn't just release a few droplets, he released a new, hyper-resilient airborne strain that didn't require fleas or rats to spread. It bypassed the lymph nodes and went straight for the respiratory system. It was nearly 100% fatal, and it could live on surfaces for weeks. It wasn't a wave, it was a flood that never receded. By the year 1400, the concept of public life had completely vanished from the face of the earth. Imagine the psychological toll. The church, once the center of all social gathering, didn't just lose its spiritual power, it was forcibly converted into a ministry of sanitation. The holy water fonts were replaced with primitive vinegar-based disinfectants. Bless you wasn't a polite courtesy anymore. It was a frantic, terrifying prayer for the person standing 10 feet away from you. As the decades turned into centuries, the isolation became the new religion. The Great London Fire of 1666 wasn't an accident in our world. It was a deliberate, state-sponsored cleansing. The government burned the city to the ground just to kill the spores that had lived in the wood for 300 years. Human genius didn't stop, but it was redirected. While your ancestors were painting the Sistine Chapel or composing symphonies, our ancestors were obsessed with the architecture of separation. The Renaissance didn't focus on the beauty of the human form. It focused on the fortification of the human home. The first primitive hazmat suits, made of treated leather and heavy glass lenses, were invented in the 1500s. We didn't learn to sail the oceans to find spices. We sailed to find islands where we could escape the air of the continents. The centuries of silence. By the 1800s, the clean zones had become the only places where civilization could survive. These were walled cities, connected not by roads, but by ironclad, airtight tunnels. If you lived in London, you stayed in London. The idea of travel became a myth, a story told in forbidden books. The Industrial Revolution in our timeline was driven by one thing: survival. We didn't build steam engines to move goods. We built them to power massive ventilation systems. We didn't invent electricity to light our homes. We invented it to power the ultraviolet lamps that killed the bacteria in our hallways. The cost was our humanity. We stopped being a social species. We became a fragmented one. The family unit became a biological fortress. Children were raised with a deep, visceral fear of the outdoors. The ground itself was declared sovereign territory of the plague. Can you imagine a world where you have never seen a bird? Where you have never felt grass under your feet? Because the soil carries the spores and the birds carry the death. Everything outside the clean zones is a red zone. A wild, overgrown nightmare where the plague still reigns supreme, waiting for a single tear in a protective suit to reclaim its prize. And Neo-Florence, life under the lens. Let's return to your life today, in 2026. You prepare for work. You are a biodata analyst. Your job is to monitor the thermal signatures of thousands of people in your district, looking for the slightest spike in body temperature. You don't commute through streets. You don't stand in a crowded subway or rub shoulders with strangers. You step into a trans tube, a pressurized, single-person vacuum pod that launches you through the silver veins of the city directly to your office hub. Look at the city of Neo-Florence from above. There are no parks. There are no open plazas or benches. Why would there be? Sitting in the open air is a luxury only the suicidal can afford. The skyline is a suffocating web of interconnected silver tubes, keeping the 8 billion survivors of the planet physically separated but digitally chained. Your entire economy is built on the biocredit. Every morning, as you brush your teeth, a sensor in your hab unit checks your sweat and saliva for the Yersinia 26 variant. If that sensor light turns red, your life as you know it is over. Your door locks permanently. Your credits are frozen. A cleaning drone is dispatched to your location. Your story ends in a silent cloud of medical-grade disinfectant. Privacy, that is a 19th century fairy tale. In a world where a single sneeze from an infected individual can collapse an entire city-state in 48 hours, the government must know everything. They know the oxygen saturation in your blood. They know the rhythm of your heart. They know who you talk to and what you say. Your freedom has been redefined. It is no longer the right to go where you want. It is the right to remain uninfected. And what about love? What about the most basic human need? In our 2026, romance is a virtual reality simulation. You meet your partner in the scent cloud, a digital plaza where you wear haptic suits that simulate the feeling of a touch that isn't actually there. You can spend 40 years married to someone, raising two-born children in separate chambers through automated surrogacy without ever knowing the actual weight of their body against yours. You live together, you dream together, but you are separated by miles of steel and layers of glass. The internet isn't just for entertainment or work in our world. It is our central nervous system. It is the only place where we are allowed to be together. Without the 1969 pivot to a global digital grid, the human race would have simply withered away and gone extinct from the sheer weight of its own loneliness. Skin terror, the new phobia. Does it sound like a nightmare to you? Or, if you're honest with yourself, does it sound safe? That is the true horror of this timeline. We have been in quarantine for nearly 700 years. We don't fear the isolation anymore. We have forgotten what it's like to be free. What we fear is the contact. There is a word in our language that doesn't exist in yours. Skin terror. It is the visceral, bone-chilling panic we feel if a protective suit has a microscopic tear, or if a sterilization seal fails. We have traded our souls, our culture, and our physical freedom for a longer lifespan. Because we don't move, because we don't travel, and because we never touch, we have accidentally eliminated almost every other disease. Cancer is rare because our environment is perfectly controlled. Heart disease is low because our diets are chemically optimized. But the human spirit, it has withered. We are a planet of 8 billion ghosts, living in high-tech tombs, watching digital recreations of a world we lost 7 centuries ago. Think about your own 2026 for a moment. Think about the crowded concerts you attend. Think about the sweaty gyms, the messy, beautiful, and dangerous reality of a crowded city street during rush hour. To us, looking through the glass, your world looks like a reckless suicide cult. But to you, our world looks like a high-tech morgue. Which one is truly alive? The most dangerous weapon. Every time you shake a hand, every time you kiss a loved one, every time you stand in a crowd and feel the collective heat of 1,000 bodies pressing against you, you are dancing on the razor's edge of a historical miracle. Our world is what happens when nature refuses to back down. Our world is the price of eternal safety. It is the result of one man, in one port, in 1347, coughing in the wrong direction. You are lucky. You live in the timeline where the plague ended. But as you look at your phone today, as you see the next health alert, the next global threat, or the next mandatory restriction, ask yourself, how much of your soul would you give up to never be sick again? How many walls would you build to ensure you live forever in a cage? Look at your hands. Move your fingers. Treasure the sensation of the air against your skin. Because in another version of today, those hands are not for holding. They are the most dangerous weapons you could ever own. Cherish the mess. Cherish the danger. Because the alternative is a silence that lasts forever.